the conclusion of the new Egoist League in Blue Lock, we were given a ranking of the top 23 most valuable players in the series, who would then go on to form the New Japan U20 team going into the U20 World Cup. And with this arc coming to a close, we got some incredible performances and achievements by some Blue Lockers, and some soul-crushing and saddening moments by others. Personally speaking, I think that bid scaling is one of the worst ways to scale Blue Lock players in the series. So in today's video, I intend on explaining why and converting you to the religion known as bid scalers are butt suckers, and using bid scaling is not an accurate way to determine who is stronger or better player in Blue Lock. Yes, it's another angry era rant video, so get ready for it. Before getting into it though, spoiler warning for the latest events of the Blue Lock series, and if you are not caught up, I would suggest you click off this video now if you wish to not be spoiled. My opening reason for exactly why I dislike bid scaling and using it as an accurate form to scale these characters comes from how the bids are actually calculated. When Ego reveals the Blue Lock TV element of the NEL, he says directly on numerous occasions that these values are what the world holds for a specific player. But there are some issues with this when you look deeper into it, which is why this form of scaling is inaccurate. After the Manshine City game, we see Noah reveal the top 6 values, to which he shows Reo getting an offer from Arsenal, to which he says a very specific sentence which devalues this ranking system. Some clubs highly value that style of play. This statement alone should disprove this method as accurate scaling. The clubs and critics of the world are not giving you a value overall based on your skill, they are giving you a value based on what they personally believe and value from your skills and what you can bring for them. Reo got a 40 million value from Arsenal because they believe that his skills are worth 40 million. But other clubs may not value Reo as highly. Some might value him as only being 30 million or maybe as low as 20 million. The 40 million is simply the highest value, but that doesn't make it the average value, which should be the calculated worth. Nagi's 5-stage revolver fake volley post Manshine netted him 88 million yen, but that doesn't mean he is worth that much as a whole. That's just simply the highest bid. You don't get an A for the overall grade of your class simply because a 98 was the highest score you got on a test. If the rest of your grades are 80s and 70s, your average is what should be calculated. Having a player's value be the highest and not the average of what the entire world overall values them for is pretty foolish to me. I understand in context that the highest value is what's shown for the circumstances of these players getting offers, but not giving the average value is what is the issue to me. That 40 million for Reo is for him to be a playmaking midfielder for Arsenal, but that might not be what he wants to do. If he wants to be a goal scorer and a striker, then this 40 million means nothing because he is only valued for that one role, not what he truly desires to be. Chigiri in the NEL became a striker on the wing who, according to him directly, doesn't want to pass the ball. However, if Manshine specifically bid on him to become a crosser for the club, then that value isn't inherently what Chigiri is worth, since it's valuing him for a role that he doesn't desire to play. You get what I mean? But when it comes to value, there are circumstances and incentives for players to be bid on more or higher than other specific players who might be better. In chapter 241, it's stated that the critics of the world want Isagi and Kaiser to team up in the future, setting themselves up as the strongest duo. This is a direct incentive for club owners to bid higher for Isagi, assuming they want a striker like Michael Kaiser as well, especially post PXG game, where they showed their compatibility together. Meaning because Real bid so high for Kaiser, they would likely bid a little higher for Isagi because they would want them for this potential team up. Same for really any club that wants an Isagi and Kaiser duo on their roster. They aren't bidding for Isagi because of his direct skills and talents as a player, they are bidding higher for him because of the skills and talents he has as a player as they interact with another potential player. That's one core reason I dislike this style of ranking. The way the bids are calculated are not a determined factor of one's skills, but one's skills in relation to what a club wants. And remember, all clubs don't want the same thing. English clubs value physical speed and rushing power. Spanish clubs value tiki-taka style plays, and Germany values efficiency. All these clubs value different things. They all inherently won't view Isagi or any player as an even value, meaning the highest value is for a specific role that might go against what Isagi himself desires. Hell, after the Manshine game, according to the world, they wanted Isagi as a new type of midfielder, one that excels at both offense and defense to team up with Noah. And Isagi said, "No, I don't want that. I want to play as a striker. I thank you for your value, but that's not what I want to do." Based on that reaction to this bid, they might take it away from him. Therefore, Isagi would not actually be worth this much money, and therefore it would disrupt the ranking. But that doesn't mean that Isagi as a whole is 300 million. His value would be closer to the average. Another factor that I believe invalidates the bid scaling method as being accurate is the structure of the NEL and the factors for what contribute to bid value. When you look at the NEL, it is less structured like an actual regulation match and is instead placed more in the same category as the second or third selection. That's because of the 3-goal requirement to obtain victory. Already, going into the NEL, this is, in my opinion, one of the worst decisions for this arc. With this requirement, that means that only 12 goals can be scored for an entire team. At max 8 if they happen to be on the losing end. Meaning even a bad striker or a player not on relative level to others can get a huge increase and be valued over others, simply because they managed to snatch one of the 8 to 12 possible goals for the team. My biggest example of this is Eita Atoya on FC Barça. On Barça, Atoya was one of 3 potential goal scorers, with the other 2 being Bachata and the master striker, Lavinho. With Lavinho though, with him only being present on the pitch for a max of 3 minutes, he isn't a total contender for goals, meaning Barça's goal scoring capabilities come down to Bachata and Atoya. So already, if 12 goals can be scored for Barça, Atoya only has to compete with one other person on Barça when it comes to them scoring. But if we look at Bayern München, assuming you're Yukimiya here, you have to compete with Isagi, Kaiser, and Kunigami, 3 very high-level strikers. That's not including the current best striker in the world. It's already imbalanced due to the relation of players on specific teams, and even more so the capacity of scoring goals while dealing with these other high-level players. I actually want to focus on the master strikers and the star change system because that's actually one of the more ridiculous things of this structure for the tournament. The ability to bring on these grown-ass men who are at youngest of the adults is 27, and the oldest is 37, who all have the ability and capacity to score goals. That is genuinely unfair. It would make more sense if they weren't allowed to score, or if the goals that they did score were invalid. But 2 of these guys came out onto the pitch with the intention of stealing the spotlight and scoring, to which 2 of the master strikers in the NEL did. So just take away one of the potential goals able to be scored for a team, because no way are you outplaying and scoring against current senior pros. But bringing it back to Atoya, the reason that I bring him up in the first place is in relation to the goals scored and the bids for them. Inherently in the real world, strikers are more valued than other players on the pitch. And with the limited capacity of goals, if they manage to score one of the potential 8 to 12, they are going to be seen as highly valuable. So much so that they can surpass another player in terms of bid value, someone who might be better than them. Case in point, Atoya when it relates to Aiku and Karasu. I feel like it's a no-brainer argument to say that Aiku and Karasu are superior players to someone like Atoya. Karasu, in my opinion, has performed better in his respective role than Atoya has in his. Linking up and setting up the unpredictable Charles, which has led to several goals for PXG thanks to Shido. And with his awakening of Metavision, he was a serious defensive threat to Isagi and Hiyori when playing against Bayern München. The same goes for Aiku. He was consistently contributing effective plays in both the backline and midfield, and was one of the more dominant defensive threats during the match against Bayern München. Plus, these 2 players are inherently defenders, which makes them less valuable than someone like Atoya, who is a goal scorer, despite these 2 players being better than Atoya. Aiku or Karasu could stop 100 goals from being scored, but they would still seem less valued than Atoya because of the nature of strikers and the world's value for them. Again, that doesn't make Atoya better because he has a higher bid value. It simply makes his position more valuable. It doesn't make him more skilled. This goes for Gagamaru as well, as he's one of the more major players that I think was screwed over. Gagamaru is the only prominent goalkeeper in the series, with the only other one being Fukaku from the former Japan U20 team. Gagamaru had participated in 3 NEL games and got 3 saves, which gave him an overall value of 50 million yen, meaning on average each save was about 16.7 million. In hindsight, doesn't seem that crazy. till you realize what each save was worth. Post Manshine, Gagamaru received a 28 million yen value for stopping Ryo's Travella shot. Now, obviously, this was Gagamaru's debut game, so his value was likely influenced by that as well, but all in all, Gagamaru saving Ryo's shot was worth around 28 million yen to Bayern München. Now remember that. Going into the Ubers game, Gagamaru's value increased to 32 million yen. What? Are you seeing the disparity here? But maybe Gagamaru didn't do anything of value in this game. Maybe that's why he didn't increase a lot. Well, Gagamaru's major save from this game was catching the stealth kill shot. Now, in and of itself, even if this shot was a basic shot, I think Gagamaru increasing by only 4 million yen is just disappointing and stupid. But this is the stealth kill shot we're talking about here. This technique is what let Burū become a 100 million yen man in his opening game against FC Barça. And he just scored a goal against Bayern München using this technique, not 10 minutes previously. To the world, this shooting technique has a 100% success rate going into an interaction with a goalkeeper. So stopping a shot that is recorded to have a 0% chance of being stopped should be worth a lot more than just 4 million, but it's not, and that just makes no sense to me. If the limit of goals being scored is 3, stopping any shot that would typically result in a goal, especially this one with a 100% success rate, should be worth a lot more than 4 million, but for some reason, it's not. And going into Gagamaru's final value, he earned a value of 50 million yen, increasing by 18 million. What the fuck? Okay, now you have to be seeing the discrepancy in this. Going from a 28 million yen increase to a 4 million yen increase to an 18 million yen increase? What is the standard for these values? But for Gagamaru's final save, it was blocking Rin's post shot that was about to go over the line. Now, this shot realistically is the most impressive, so I understand why it got a bigger value than the other one. But still, I feel like this block should have been worth more. If Ryo's Travella block was worth 28 million yen, this should have been at least 30 million yen, especially given the circumstances. This block occurred when PXG and Bayern München were tied, meaning if not for Gagamaru, PXG would have won the game. If a goal is worth a lot in a 3-goal system, a clutch save which stops the other team from winning should be worth a lot too. But now it's time for the biggest reason I disagree with bid scaling. That being the involvement of the environments and the circumstances around them. Based on whatever environment the Blue Lockers chose, this led to their development for the next 50 days of this arc. Now, this isn't inherently the part that I have an issue with. It's the uneven criteria that kind of pushes my buttons. For example, going into the NEL, Atoya and Bachira were able to play for a total of 4 matches, while Hiyori, for example, was only able to play for 2. Now, people will use the excuse of, oh, Hiyori wasn't good enough to play in 2 of the matches. And that's not really a valid reason. This is because the difference is of the Master Strikers. The criteria that the Master Strikers have to play their specific Blue Lockers is different, as Noah had the ideology of numbers and player stats to determine the starting 11, while Lavinho likely had a different deciding criteria. You can actively see this with Bachira and Atoya being the only 2 Blue Lockers to start against Bayern München, versus in the game against Manshine City, where you see former Japan U20 players like Hayate and Darai playing for FC Barça. The ability to play in more games comes down to your master's criteria and decision making of whether or not you deserve to play. It's based on their leniency for your ability to earn value. I'd understand the not good enough to play argument if each player was put onto the pitch for an even amount of games or the criteria was the same. But for players like Burū and Shido, you're comparing Burū's performances in 3 matches to Shido's in 4. Assuming everyone got to play in all 4 matches, the distribution of the players and their values would be entirely different. It's not a fair balance, which should be more than enough evidence to disprove this method of scaling as being accurate. Another thing you need to consider is the clubs themselves. Let's take a look at how Ego describes the country of France going into the NEL. Ego describes the France stratum as being attributed to a lot of money due to a recent influx of private investors. So just like in real life, France has a lot of money to spend and therefore a lot of money to give. While this inherently doesn't make it 100% true, it is evidence to conclude that France likely has the ability to bid higher for specific players than other countries like England or Italy do. Meaning those with bid values from France could could potentially be given inflated bids or higher bids due to the amount of money that France has at their disposal. It's like comparing an indie project with a budget of $100 to a budget of $100,000. But something else that's important to consider for the clubs is the role you're going to be playing for those clubs. I mentioned this with Rayo earlier, and it comes up here because it is very important. Rayo was bid on by Arsenal because they value his playmaking abilities in the midfield. Other clubs might have similar values or inherently a need for a specific kind of player. Thus comes the example of Burū and Snuffy. Going into the NEL, Snuffy was retiring, meaning to Ubers, they were in need of a new ace striker. That new ace striker was going to be Burū. Being trained as the next king of Ubers by the former king of Ubers Snuffy, and conditioning the Ubers formation around him to help show off his worth to Ubers, that was his goal for the NEL. This would lead to Ubers bidding especially well for Burū, seeing as they are going to want him to take over in place of Snuffy. But all of that disappeared after Burū's goal against Bayern München. Due to Burū's ego, Snuffy withdrew his retirement, vowing to fight until Burū defeats him. This action immediately took away the need for Burū at Ubers. With Snuffy not retiring, they no longer need an ace striker. Therefore, they won't be bidding as high for him anymore. This is why, despite scoring 2 super goals against Bayern München, he only gained 30 million yen, and why against Manchester City, after scoring another 2, he only increased by 20 million yen. Burū single-handedly screwed himself over by telling Snuffy to rescind his retirement, and he likely would have surpassed Shido in NEL value if he didn't. This would mean to those who use bid scaling that Burū is superior, despite not doing a single thing of difference during play that would change his NEL value. Speaking of Shido, he is a very good character to use for another example of why bid scaling is stupid. Shido did very well in the NEL, scoring 4 goals thanks to his scoring talent, combined with the unpredictable nature of Charles Chevalier. But Charles' presence here is something of importance. PXG came to the NEL for the purpose of nurturing Charles to then help Loki become the best in the world. Assuming Charles awakens and helps Loki, this would mean a lot of money for PXG as a club due to Loki being signed to them. This means that any striker with the capability of awakening Charles is going to have a high value in the eyes of the PXG club, because this would inherently mean a lot of money for them if Charles were to awaken and therefore help Loki. And with Rain being outbid by Real due to his performances in the PXG game, PXG would be down one of the 2 strikers with this capability to awaken Charles, meaning they would want to bid a little bit extra for Shido to ensure he comes to their club. Sure, they might spend a little bit more than they want to, but it's a solid return on investment. So automatically, outside circumstances for the club and what they desire from you can influence bids and bid ranking, causing this to be an inconsistent method of scaling. But since we just talked about Shido, it's the perfect time to mention my final reasoning for why I hate bid scaling. That being the impact of other players. Within the story, while it is a story, we go off of the logic that within this universe, there is no god pulling the strings, making the decision for anyone. To the characters, every action is their own, and their decisions impact the results that they receive. But considering that to be true, this would mean that the NEL bid values are influenced by who went to what specific stratum. Using Shido as an example here, if Charles was not at PXG, would Shido really be worth 160 million? No, of course not. In that same way, without Hiyori, Isagi is never hitting 150 million after Ubers. Who went to which stratum directly impacts the performances of others in both positive and negative ways. If Ryo was never at Manshine City, Nagi likely would not have lost his ego and would not have been locked off from BLUELOCK. The skill level of these players is determined by who was with them at that stratum. But even more so, just them being on the same team, whether they interacted at all, is substantial. Let's take a look at the post-Manshine City bids, shall we? We see that with it, Yukimiya was ranked in 9th place with a value of 29 million. Inherently, without Gagamaru being on this team, without him being in the German stratum, Yukimiya likely would not have been ranked where he was at the end of the NEL. Gagamaru's involvement on Bayern München led to him saving Real's Trivela shot. Given what we know about Gagamaru, it's possible that this would have been a goal from Real in the opening play. Combine that with Chigity's goal with his 44 Panther snipe and Nagi's 5-stage revolver fake volley against Isagi, this would have led to Yukimiya not scoring the sword screw, meaning he doesn't hit a 29 million yen value. Meaning because of this, if we consider his value for the Manshan City game, assuming he didn't score this goal, he likely would have been ranked below Sendo, maybe even below Fukaku. Does this mean that Yukimiya is worse than Sendo pre-sword screw? No! Of course not. It simply means that the NEL bid values were offset from the normal storyline. And with that, those are just my reasons as to why I believe that NEL bid scaling is just a poor way to power scale within the Blue Lock series. Now you can try and argue the narrative all you want here, but you do need to consider the realistic factors that influence these decisions and the bids themselves. Because if you don't, your argument has no strength and, funny enough, no value. But aside from that, I hope you guys did enjoy this video and will continue to enjoy it in the future. I just want to leave a final reminder to join my Discord server if you're ever interested in getting any more involved with our amazing community. As for the question of the video, do you support NEL bid scaling? If so, why? Leave me your thoughts down below in the comment section. And like always, thank you all so much for watching. Like and subscribe to see more awesome Blue Lock content just like this.